This is day 1 of Kayden's form-focused advanced program. The first superset is going to be dumbbell goblet squats with a pause at the bottom, and the second is going to be bent over dumbbell rows with a pause at the top. So starting up here with the goblet squat, you'll see that I sit my butt backwards, and I'm doing so in a completely vertical, straight up and down manner. That means that my knees are not going too far forward and I'm not leaning too far backwards. You can actually take a look at the dumbbell itself. It's going straight down and straight up as I hold it. Now, in terms of range of motion, you should be able to go as low as you possibly can, but if you start to feel irritation in your knees or your lower back, it's totally fine to just do a half range of motion or whatever range of motion doesn't cause you irritation and pain. So you see here that my legs, my thighs, are getting at least parallel with the ground or even lower. So immediately going into the second exercise, which is the bent over rows, I'm going to get over into that bent over position, keeping my back straight to the point where I actually feel my hamstrings and my glutes loaded and stretched as well. And what we're going to do is focus on using your back muscles, your mid back, upper back to get that weight up. We don't really want you shrugging too much with the shoulders. We want you rowing it back. Now, a common mistake with this exercise is that if you're not focusing on using your abs or your core to brace, you'll notice that your body will raise throughout the exercise to the point where you're almost vertical by the end of it. That defeats the purpose and that turns a row more into a shrug. So we want to make sure that your abs are on so you maintain that angle. Now we've got 30 seconds rest before we do that superset again. So just keep in mind, a superset is when you do back-to-back exercises without a break in the same circuit. Then once you complete the exercises, you can take a break. So here we go goblet squats, then right into the bent over rows, and then a break. And then we do set 2 and set 3. All right, so here is set 2. And again, focus on the same thing. Sit your butt back, get as big of a range of motion as you can. If you're a really tall exerciser, what can happen is that your knees will probably go over your toes, even if you have good form, and that's totally fine. Everyone's a little bit different, but you just want to make sure that you're going vertically down and up without leaning too far backwards or forwards. You'll know that you're leaning too far forwards if you start to lose your balance or if your heels or your toes come off the ground. You want to maintain solid foot contact. Keep a good breathing tempo as well. Now my pause at the bottom is just about 1 second, just enough to stop the momentum. And that's essentially the purpose of the pause. We don't want you bouncing around and using your elasticity or your muscles too much. We want you actually controlling and contracting the muscles from the beginning. All right, now back into the bent over rows once again, staying in that bent over position, keeping the abs tight, row back. You don't have to row as high as you possibly can. You'll notice here that my arms are bent at about a 90-degree angle at the top, and we're holding again at the top so that we don't use too much quick momentum. You actually get a nice strong contraction in that finished position. This is your third and final set for this superset. I want you to focus even more on this set. This is because you've already done a couple sets, and as you fatigue, it becomes harder and harder to keep the proper form. So we want you to focus extra hard to make sure you get all the reps with proper form throughout this last superset. Now, in terms of breathing pattern, we pretty much always want you exhaling when you're exerting force the most, which is on the way up, and a deep breath at the top, and then brace. However, as you get more and more tired, especially because this is a low rest interval, only 30 seconds, it's going to be tough to catch your breath every time. So as long as you're using lighter weights, it's fine to breathe at whatever cadence allows you to breathe the most. Same rules apply for the bent over rows. It becomes harder and harder to maintain that bent over position where your stabilizer muscles are working, and you have to focus on maintaining that position while rowing back. The second superset here is rear foot elevated split squats, also known as Bulgarian split squats, and then a kneeling shoulder slide. This is an interesting superset because Bulgarian split squats are really difficult and they actually gas you a lot. You're doing back-to-back legs, so we superset it with an easier, less strenuous exercise where it's more focused on getting your rotator cuff muscles and a lot of your stabilizer muscles, which helps improve mobility and posture. So for a Bulgarian split squat here, you'll notice that my rear foot is elevated, my toe is on a bench. Now that bench is actually a little bit high. It's totally fine for me, but ideally you would have something maybe about a foot off the ground instead of around 18 inches off the ground where this one is. And it's a split squat, so you're going straight down and up. You're not lunging forward. That's the difference between a lunge and a squat or split squat. You're going right down and right up completely vertically without any anterior forward translation. So here I do the other side. And it's just like a squat. You'll see that I'm bending the knee and the hip joint while I'm holding the dumbbell in a goblet position. You want to keep everything tight, and stability is really hard at first with this exercise. So a weight will actually help as a counterbalance. I want you to get a full range of motion. You'll feel mostly the front legs, glute, and quad, and your rear legs quad will actually be working a little bit as well. I want you to focus most of your energy on that front leg though, and keeping the core active to help balance and stabilize. Now here I am setting up for the second exercise, which is the shoulder slides. I'm going to take off my hat because my head is actually touching that pole right there. This is so that I know I'm going in a straight line and I can get my arms all the way backwards without cheating and like moving my neck or my head forwards or backwards. My whole body is aligned on the pole. And all I'm doing is just raising my arms a couple inches each rep and then squeezing my shoulder blades back together. This helps get the rotator cuff muscles going and the upper back thoracic spine muscles as well. If you have a desk job, you tend to be really, really tight and your shoulders very rounded, and these muscles usually don't work enough or at all. So your first set of both of these exercises is always going to be the most difficult. What I want you to focus on is again the stability for the split squat and getting the right muscles working for the second exercise. Now the reason why we chose a kneeling shoulder glide is because if you're standing, you can sway back and forth more. So right when you go to kneeling, that takes away one more joint that you could possibly compensate with. You'll also notice that I jump out a little bit here. This is because both of my knees should be at about a 90-degree angle. If I'm too far away, I'll feel a big stretch in my hip flexor. That can be okay, but once you start doing heavier weights, you don't want to risk tearing it or irritating that muscle group that's being stretched. And alternatively, if you're too close to the bench, it'll be very awkward to get down and you won't be able to get a full range of motion. So what we're doing here is making sure that I'm at a position that's relatively comfortable and both of my knees are bending at a 90-degree angle when I'm at the bottom. Now, like I said, these gas you a lot, so you don't want to go super heavy with these, especially in this circuit, this superset, where we're only getting 30 seconds of rest in between. All right, again, setting up for the second exercise. So the main thing here is getting your shoulder blades to move back and squeeze together so that they're squeezing the spine. And then you let them roll away from the spine and forward. So I'm moving my arms up a couple inches each rep. I squeeze, and then I bring my arms back to neutral, up a bit, squeeze them back and together, up a bit, and repeat. Now you don't have to do this with a pole in front of you, but the pole helps because it prevents you from cheating and compensating using other muscles to get that range of motion. Using a pole pretty much forces the right range of motion and the right muscles to work for you to get your arms back. Otherwise, some compensations that are typical to see is that you'll use your lower back to arch and get your arms back more. That is not what we want. We're trying to target the thoracic spine musculature around it, which is rotator cuff muscles, your rhomboids, your lats, and other upper back muscles that help move your shoulder blades. Now I'm going to leave this last set up to you. Focus on the cues that we talked about, making sure that you're going straight down and up in your Bulgarian split squats, making sure that you're not too far forwards or backwards, and making sure that you're using your abs to brace and gain stability. This exercise is really easy to fall sideways or fall forwards, and we don't want you falling. Now, if you feel like you can't do all of the reps here, it's okay. You can actually just ditch the weight and do the last set body weight, or you can stick with the same weight, do as many as you possibly can with good form, and then rest. Now I know this last set is going to be the most difficult, especially because you just did 3 sets of Bulgarian split squats before this. However, take this as a low intensity exercise that you're just focusing on moving your arms in a range of motion and squeezing your shoulder blades together. Those muscles are what we want to target, and it's very low weight. It's just gravity that you're working against. So make sure that you're doing this properly. You can even catch your breath while you're doing this, especially compared to the Bulgarian split squats that you just did. That probably gassed you out. This last set is actually 3 exercises in a circuit instead of just 2 being a superset. What we have are step downs about a couple inches off the ground. We use a plate or 2 plates stacked up. Then it's also calf raises, nice slow and controlled tempo. And last but not least is a farmer's walk. So farmer's walks, we'll talk a little bit more when the video gets there, but they look a lot less intense than they actually are, especially when you do them properly. This is a very technical, form-focused program, and this set of exercises, this circuit, is a perfect example of that. These are all very meticulous in their form and the way that they have to be done for you to feel it the most effectively. So first up, we have the step downs. You'll notice that my leg is straight and I'm only bending the leg that's on top doing the work. So I keep that leg straight and I bend down until my foot touches the ground. Then I use that left leg to push myself back up. Make sure that you don't cheat and use your right leg or your bottom leg to do a calf raise and come back up. And keep the tempo nice and controlled and slow as well. We don't want you cheating and bouncing off of the ground, and we also don't want you cheating doing a calf raise at the same time. By doing a slow and controlled tempo, you put more of the tension on that muscle. So we want to focus on the quads of your front leg, your leg that is raised by a few inches. Next up here is calf raises. Here we're doing a single leg calf raise. I'm using my hand just as a bit of a guide and a bit of support so I don't fall. When you're doing single leg stuff, it's a little more difficult to stabilize and balance. So what we can do sometimes, especially for beginners, is just put your hand on something for balance. Now you'll notice that I'm not cheating and using my hand and my arm to pull myself up. I'm still using the calves to do all of this exercise. So I have about a 2-inch plate there that I'm doing a full range of motion on. I would start very conservative if I were you. You don't even need to elevate it for your first set or even your first day doing calf raises. You can just do calf raises with your feet on the regular ground. This is because the calves and the Achilles tendon especially are quite sensitive. So if this is your first time getting into a program like this, we don't want you overstretching the muscle and causing any irritation or worst case scenario, a possible injury by overstretching your Achilles tendon or your calves. By slowly strengthening them and increasing the range of motion over time, over workouts, over week after week, you'll notice a much more beneficial increase in strength and a lot safer. If you've done calf raises before, and if you've still been physically active in the recent past month or two, then I would say it's most likely fine to get right into an elevated calf raise. So this is the third exercise in the circuit. It is a single arm farmer's carry or a suitcase carry, whatever you want to call it. Now it looks like I'm just walking, and I am. However, it's very important to stabilize properly with this exercise. We don't want you leaning towards that side that you have the dumbbell on. That just means that all you're doing is holding it and you're not using your abs to actually maintain an upright torso. This is all about bracing your whole body. You want to use your lats by squeezing your arms into your body. Another way to think about that is by crushing an orange or a walnut in your armpits. That's going to stabilize some of the upper body. And then you also want to brace your abs at the same time.